So obviously we now know that Jojopyun is headed to Koi to be their mid laner in 2025. He's headed over to the LEC in what was really a historic and unprecedented move with a North American player coming over to Europe to be an import, which is obviously something we have never really seen before. We've seen much of the opposite with those European players going over to North America with some mixed results, but now seeing it happen in the opposite way is going to be very interesting and very exciting, especially with JoJo's like NA prodigy status. You know, he like just barely turned 20 years old. Obviously, he's not coming off necessarily the best season in 2024, but at times already in his short career, he's looked like an MVP level talent. And yes, he did sign over to Koi. He did sign over to the LEC, but it sounds like his journey there was very crazy with a ton of different options. So LEC Wooloo tweeted this out a couple of days ago. Obviously, it's kind of gotten mixed up in some of the other offseason news and the World Final and all that stuff, but I still want to bring this information to you guys because he says Jojopyun's full offseason from 100 Thieves mid laner with Quid going to 80 carry, sounds crazy, to potentially even FlyQuest top lane. And then Wooloo dropped this whole article with all the different possibilities and all the different places we could have seen Jojopyun go, which I think is really cool, and I wanted to dive into a little bit more. This got almost 1 million views on Twitter. I'm pretty sure the article did really well in Cheap Esports as well. The tweet was popping off. People really love this stuff. I know people like seeing the roster moves and who's actually going where, but I think people also like hearing about the different possibilities and stuff as well. But I also know that people see a headline on Twitter and they don't always click into the article. So I wanted to go over this full article for us. Like I said, that Wooloo put together, edited by Arsh. So shout out to them. I know a lot of work went into this thing. So Jojopyun had tons of options in the LEC and LCS. So Jojopyun was the most sought after player in the LCS and LEC offseason. I think that's actually a big note from this article right off the bat, because obviously there's a ton of talented and available players and players that have been like semi-available or like maybe you can put in offers for them or whatever, but a ton of really, really talented players in both the LCS and LEC available. And to hear that Jojopyun was the most sought after, the biggest kind of free agent out there. Again, we've had guys like Mickey, Yike, Upset, a ton of crazy big names available, but JoJo was the most sought after player in both the LCS and LEC offseason this year. Cloud9's decision to drop their mid laner came as a shock to many, and it sent teams across Europe and the Americas scrambling to sign him. And again, this is him being that big of a free agent, even after 2024 wasn't necessarily even the best year of his career. He's not like at his peak form right now, or he wasn't showing his peak form in 2024. And then there's also the drama and controversy of whatever happened at Cloud9 with, you know, them alleging the tardiness issues and being late to all this different stuff and all that. But despite all that, people still showing this much interest in JoJo really shows what people think of him and what his true potential and talent really is, which I think is very crazy. So only 8 days after his contract was removed from the GCD, the 20-year-old Canadian prodigy eventually settled on joining Mad Lions Koi, as reported by Sheep Esports, but his journey to that decision was anything but straightforward. So I know a lot of people had memed on him potentially going to Korea, because we had said like, oh, he could end up in the LEC, could have been in the LCS, he could even end up in Korea, and a lot of people were like, oh, Korea would never take an NA player, like that doesn't even make sense, they'll never take JoJo. But again, last year, Live Sandbox, now known as BNK Fear X, made an unprecedented offer to Jojopyun, hoping to sign the LCK's first ever NA player. In the end, Cloud9 emerged victorious in the negotiations, and Jojopyun went through this verbal agreement to play for the NA org. This year, he hoped to remedy that mistake. So again, just last year, Live Sandbox actually made an offer to Jojopyun. So everyone's saying that, you know, a Korean team would never make an offer to an NA player. There's no way JoJo could have ended up in Korea or whatever. They're just flat out wrong. There's just no truth to that. Again, just last year, we literally could have seen Jojopyun in the LCK. Now, obviously, it didn't work out this year, but that's maybe for different reasons, as Wooloo goes on to explain. Playing in the LCK with FearX was JoJo's first choice. So JoJo actually wanted to go to the LCK over anything else. However, unlike last year, he didn't get an offer from them. They may have been interested in signing him, but the LCK offseason starts much later than in the West. So if he would have waited to maybe get an offer from them, he would have missed out on offers in the LEC and the LCS, so he had to be a little bit careful about that. So again, it's not that he wasn't going to get an offer from the LCK, it's just he had not received one early on in the offseason, and waiting to get one would have been a little bit of a gamble. But again, who knows, if JoJo ends up popping off in the LEC, maybe we could see him at the LCK in sometime in the future, or maybe he'll love the LEC so much, maybe he'll end up back in the LCS, who knows. But just keep in mind that an LCS player or an NA player going to the LCK is not off the table, especially someone with as much hype and talent and potential as JoJo. And if JoJo has success, you know, it could be possible for other players in the future as well. So, role swap offers in the LCS. His second choice also would have been a fan favorite, a reunion with Inspired on FlyQuest. Like Fox Fly was one of the teams desperate to sign JoJo when Cloud9 picked him up last year, but now Quad is the centerpiece of a roster, a brilliant player who seems to only be improving. They never considered dropping him, and I think that's what we had heard. I think I want to say Papa Smithy and a couple guys from FlyQuest had kind of already come out and said that we think Quad is like the best mid laner in like the LCS or in the West or something like that, and they weren't really ever considering moving on from him. So it didn't really seem like an option. FlyQuest did, however, consider signing Jojopyun still, though it never resulted in a concrete offer. They were interested in picking him up as a top laner in the place of Bwipo. It wasn't Jojopyun's ideal option anymore. He wanted to play mid for Fly above almost all else, not top lane. So Jojo's first option was the LCK. That wasn't on the table. His second option was FlyQuest mid laner. That seems like it wasn't on the table. And again, some of this could be a result of him having a little bit of a down year in 2024. That's very, very possible. With FlyQuest still competing at Worlds, meaning the door to further negotiation wasn't completely closed, Jojopyun entertained offers from several other LCS and LEC teams. In the LCS, he was a priority for Shopify Rebellion and 100 Thieves, but much like Fly, the latter had no plans of dropping their immensely talented mid laner. If Jojopyun took the offer from 100 Thieves, the team wouldn't be able to swap him or Quid to the top lane because Sniper is one of the LCS best prospects after all. Instead, they planned to pull off the maneuver that made G2's 2019 roster infamous. Quid would play AD carry and Quid would play AD carry and JoJo would play mid. So all of JoJo's different options involves keeping really, really talented players on their teams, but having to make some role swaps work. We know sometimes players are open to role swaps, sometimes players aren't open to role swaps. Sometimes role swaps go well, they go poorly. You never really know, but players have to be fully all out committed, which is pretty crazy. Also, as far as the FlyQuest stuff, we actually heard some confirmation from this from a member of FlyQuest as well, talking about how Bwipo would have ended up being or they would have asked Bwipo if he wanted to be a top lane coach for Jojopyun, if Jojopyun would have actually taken that top lane offer. I think that was Andy Barton with FlyQuest, I think, was talking about that stuff a little bit. So that's pretty interesting and cool to hear some of that information being confirmed and all that. But at some points during Worlds, Fly told JoJo that it was highly unlikely they'd be able to pick him up as a mid laner, leaving him with no reason to keep waiting for their elimination from the tournament. He decided to commit to Europe, where his chances of qualifying for an international tournament would be significantly higher. Next year, the LEC will get one more slot at MSI and Worlds than the America's North Conference. So again, America's North, or the LCS, LTAN, they're going to have one slot at MSI, and I believe the LEC is going to have two. And then at Worlds, the LEC will have three slots, and I think the LCS will have a possible of two. I think there's going to be one for the LTAN, one for the LTAS, and then one where they come together and decide their third team. So, it in theory should be easier to make it to Worlds and MSI and stuff from the LEC, but obviously that's also going to depend on the level of play of the teams and everything. If it really ends up being easier or harder, yes, obviously on paper, two is more than one, but two from a great region could be a lot harder than one from a softer region. Who knows? We'll have to wait and see exactly what happens there, but I do think that's crazy. Obviously, FlyQuest, with their massive success, making it to quarterfinals, then also showing up at quarterfinals as well, barely losing 3-2. Does show that FlyQuest, I'm sure, wants to try and keep as much of that roster together for next season and try to develop off this, and just shows how much talent that roster actually has and how well they fit together. But yeah, JoJo and Inspired coming back together would have been absolutely insane because they were massive together, and now they're both more experienced, more veteran, more hopefully better players overall. So maybe they'd be even better getting back together now. Who knows for sure? But in Europe, as previously corroborated by Shibi Sports reporting, Team Heretics and Mad Lions Koi both made offers to Jojopyun. By rejecting the first offer, Jojopyun forced them to choose between their next options, Camilo and Vitio, and they chose to promote Camilo directly from the LFL Division 2. Before he committed to joining Mad Lions Koi, Fnatic also reached out to have a conversation with the player, but it never happened. JoJo had already essentially made up his mind about joining Mad Lions Koi. In the end, he decided to make history by joining MDK. He is said to be the first NA player to play in the LEC. When he chose to join Cloud9's Superstar team last year, Jojopyun closed the door on options he would have loved in retrospect. Though teams still consider him one of the best players in the West, he'll have to use this year to prove he deserves a spot on the very best rosters in the West. So again, if JoJo shows out for Koi this year, maybe him and Koi develop some amazing team, amazing relationship that's going to flourish for years to come, or maybe JoJo uses this as a stepping stone to prove himself and make it to some of those teams he really wants to end up on for 2025 and beyond. Obviously, it's going to end up how he and his team does in 2025, but also how those other teams and other players do as well. Who knows? But this offseason was absolutely insane for JoJo, even in such a short time. There were so many different possibilities, so many ways this thing could have gone both last year and this year. I thought this was all really, really cool, and I love that Wooloo put this together. together for you guys. So hopefully you do appreciate it, and hopefully it's fun to talk about and discuss and speculate about all the things that could have been, especially, you know, with now the offseason kind of coming to a close in the LEC, and just seeing how crazy these things can actually be behind the scenes. You know, all we saw was JoJo going to Mad Lions Koi, but we never really saw the, you know, 10 other different places he could have went, and how close sometimes these things can make, and how organizations and players both sometimes have to make some very, very crazy, very tough decisions in an instant, and you never know how that can impact their future. But yeah, pretty much over this video today, guys. Hopefully catch you in the next one. Until then, peace. Everything we are doing here at Sheep Esports for the rest of 2024 is powered by Holy. This is an awesome company that makes great tasting energy drinks that also just so happen to be healthier than the competition as well. They sent me this starter set deluxe, which comes with a Holy shaker and then 14 individual servings of Holy Energy, Holy Hydration, and Holy Iced Tea. So you get a ton of awesome stuff for a great price. And if you want to get even better price, check out the first link in the description below. Use discount code SE5 to get €5 off your first order, or SE10 to get 10% off your entire basket. If you guys want to help continue to allow us to provide the amazing coverage of both Worlds and the offseason that you guys know and love, definitely check out Holy, buy some stuff. It would mean the world to us. Thanks.